Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We will wait another few minutes. People are still logging in, so we'll give them a chance to join us. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this joint webinar by Cybellum and PTC. With us today are John Auld and Marcus Kreutz. John has over 20 years of experience in helping companies successfully adopt digital strategies to solve complex issues. For many years, he has been with Siemens PLM, introducing the concept of SBOM components management and the releasing of software within the context of the supply chain. In his current role with Cybellum, he is part of the team that is taking a new approach at managing cyber health throughout the entire product lifecycle and across a portfolio of products. Marcus is head of sales, system, and software engineering at PTC. Marcus has over 20 years of experience in the system engineering business in several roles, starting from software engineering, pre and post-sales roles included. He has been serving in different responsibilities in regulated markets, including medical devices, defense, and automotive. Please feel free to ask us questions as they pop into your head. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to do so. Marcus and John will review these questions towards the end of the session and will answer them one by one. And with that, we're ready to start. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adi, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to kick off the discussion today, giving a quick glimpse at what Cybellum does. We're going to kind of look at two different angles. One is specifically around product cybersecurity, and then we're going to step back and look at the bigger PLM picture and how those kind of work together. But from a high level, Cybellum kind of has three core tenets, and what our mission is to enable device manufacturing suppliers to develop and maintain secure connected components. So specifically, what do we look at? We look at vulnerability management throughout the product lifecycle, and we'll talk more about that as we go through here. But you'll see things like we promote shift left, scan early, and scan often. So we build product cybersecurity into existing PLM lifecycle threads, which you'll see today with our partners at PTC. We identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses areas early and measure the progress the team has made as the products mature up through production launch. And then the second pillar is looking at compliance with policies, standards, and regulations. We'll talk a lot about that today, but threats and exploits are much more common today, which drives the needs for standards and regulations. Evaluating your portfolio of products against these standards and regulations can be very time consuming. So we'll show you ways to automate a lot of that process with some of the built-in templates we have. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, customers can also configure their own policies that are part of their workflows to ensure compliance to policies and standards. The third thing that Cybellum focuses on is continuously monitoring and a response to products post-launch. So after you've launched a product, you now have this digital representation, which we'll talk about moving forward. So we've got a digital representation of all the products in your portfolio, which allows you to quickly react to threats and exposures as they come up, so you can identify which products are affected and how to mitigate the risks or exposure. So from a high level, those are the three areas that we'll talk about from a product cybersecurity standpoint today. And then, as I said before, we're going to also look from a very higher level, the PLM aspect. So I'm going to have Marcus come next and talk about PTC and their core offerings in the PLM space. So Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, John. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Okay,
perfect. Yeah, thanks for giving us the possibility as a co-presenter in your webinar. Thanks to Cybellum. And for those who do not know PTC, just a few words who we are and where the focus for today is. So PTC is a Boston, East Coast based software company. What we have on our mind is the day work of an engineer, helping companies to create the right products in the right quality. So what we stand for is the power to create. And that's what we think about and where we help our customers. So you may know PTC from products like Creo for computer-aided design systems. You may heard about the several awarded industrial IoT platform, ThingWorx, also may be known for augmented reality and spatial computing. But today we want to take a more closer look into the PLM space. And at PTC, we have several business units. Obviously, there's the Windchill PLM business unit we work close with, and us, the systems and software engineering business unit. So for today, we want to concentrate on one of our core products called Windchill RVNS. RVNS stands for Requirement Engineering, means any type of requirements, high-level system requirements, market requirements, decomposed down into the industry levels like mechanical, electric, electronic, software, obviously, and also corresponding to that from a test or validation point of view, the same thing can be traced, created, and reported for test management. Included here as well is a source code management component. It means for all binary or source code related files that can be stored and traced here as well. For completeness, but not our focus today, is Windchill Modeler. Windchill Modeler is a fantastic tool working on model-based system engineering, notations like SysML, defining, describing the product in its context, its behavior, and its structure. The same thing can be done for software design, software modeling based on UML, including code generation as well for our industrial IoT platform and system or co-simulation capabilities. So these products itself have nice traceability, but we have in mind at PTC is the digital product traceability, which you see on the right bottom side. And Adi, if you please go to the next slide. So what does this mean? Traceability is key for quality management systems in medical, which need to fulfill the medical device standards. Traceability in regulated markets overall is important. So I talked about that in Windchill RVNS, we have all these kind of requirements and validation steps, including tasks, defects, and things like that, as well on modeler side. But if we look in Windchill PLM world, we see the engineering BOM, which is maybe linked to the manufacturing BOM. And it would be interesting to know for our customers what was the purpose of this design? Why does the system behave like it behaves? And so it's important to have traceability also beside the system of records, and we have embedded this into our products. So it means there's a seamless embedded UI, and we are able to connect requirements with the engineering BOM as well with tests to answer questions like, did I hit the regulations? Are all my requirements being managed? What is the result? Have they been tested? And show on a quick and efficient way all this kind of information. So that's important for our customers today. They live in a complex world, complex from a product point of view, but also complex from a engagement or communication point of view. Distributed engineering teams, manufacturing, supply chains, all these kind of elements need to be considered to be compliant to ISO norms like 13485 or software development related standards in medical like 62304 and others. So in here we have a exactly nice match between Cybellum and Windchill RVNS and Windchill PLM. We talk about traceability from a big picture, and what we need today with software-centric products, especially in medical device, is a component which we can also integrate, being part of this overall simplified schema. That means besides safety requirements, there's a necessity for security requirements as well, for security validation, the outcomes, the related actions which needs to be taken. So in here we will fit perfectly together. It's a win-win for both companies. And that's the purpose of today's call, how to achieve traceability for medical device with our two components. And I'm handing back to you, John, and we can dive into the details.
Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, that was a great view of the higher level, the complexities of the PLM processes. And I'm gonna step back into the product cybersecurity view for just a couple minutes, and then we're gonna walk into what that integrated workflow would look like between a higher level PLM workflow and how Cybellum would fit into that. Well, I wanna kind of set the stage of why are we talking about this now. So the landscape is changing, and specifically around cyber breaches in general. If you look at the fact that 34%, we're talking about medical devices here, and this is the healthcare sector, 34% of all security breaches happen in the healthcare sector. So it's one of the most heavily targeted industries. And there's a few reasons why that happens. If you just look at the attack footprint, on average, a hospital has 85,000 connected devices in a hospital. So the number of entry points for a hacker to look at is tremendous. So just the attack path itself in the landscape. The other driving point I'll call out on this slide is that what's the value of the data once you get it? So the value of healthcare data on the dark web is 10 to 40 times more valuable than credit card information, which I found amazing. So if I'm a hacker, I'm going to target an industry that I've got a huge playground of attack paths, and I know I'm going to get paid well. So there's a lot of reasons why the healthcare industry is a huge attack surface today. The other thing is why now? There's a lot of reasons out there, but there's three that really set with us. And the first is it's easy to execute. So if you look at the previous slide, how many options you have to get into, say, the network or attack a device, it grows exponentially daily. It becomes an easy target for hackers. The second is easy payment methods. So I want to get paid. Today's world with digital currency and the anonymity around the payment systems makes it easy for hackers to get paid and stay under the radar. And the third is really the most important, is the reliance on digital infrastructure. So not only is it a connected component or a connected medical device, companies have built such a rich revenue stream around the digital infrastructure and the services, the add-on services. So any disruption that they have, let's say there's a data breach, there's a denial of service. Now you've got to weigh any lost time or any lost integrity equals a lost revenue stream. So sure, I'm more apt to pay to get out of the situation I'm in rather than wait for it to get sorted out. So attackers know this. They know that they can get paid easily and that companies are more apt to pay because now they're more reliant on this digital infrastructure. So it's kind of the perfect storm. So now what happens in any industry where this becomes a mainstream event is you have new regulations and you have new standards coming in that try and help companies navigate these waters. And we'll look at just one today. And I'm bringing this up because part of our platform helps companies navigate these security policies and standards throughout the life cycle. So if you look at the FDA standard, which is the content for pre-market submission for management of cybersecurity and medical devices. So a very lengthy thing, but if you look in it, there's specific call outs around cybersecurity and pointing towards the prevention of unauthorized access, modification, misuse, or denial of use. It specifically talks about life cycle. So in the past, a lot of product cybersecurity was done as a scanning event, a point in time report that came out. It's talking about managing the cyber risk throughout the entire life cycle. The third is the different BOM views. So one of the most difficult tasks that device manufacturers have is getting an accurate view of what is the software that ends up on my device. So I'm taking a whole mix of stuff that I've developed in-house. I'm leveraging open source, commercial software. So I've got a whole mix of software and hardware that end up on a device. How do I get an accurate view of what exactly ended up there from what I own and what I've leveraged outsourced for my supply chain? And then the last thing here to point out is it talks specifically around code analysis. There's numerous requirements around static as well as dynamic code analysis, looking for vulnerabilities and weaknesses. You know, these are part of the core pillars we talked about in the opening slide of what Cybellum does. So these regulations bring a whole host of challenges. Now, we've seen similar challenges and we've solved these in the past. So our industry has gone through this. And so how do we do it? There's two key things that we've used for things around, let's say, a CAE process, safety process that Marcus was alluding to earlier. How do we solve this? We created a digital twin that represented the system we're trying to simulate. And then we created a process of PLM around that. So we're taking a similar approach for product cybersecurity, and we're creating a digital representation, we're creating a digital twin that is persistent throughout the life cycle of the product. And then there's a management platform that takes the specific product cybersecurity requirements, and we complement existing systems like PTC Windchill by adding these specific product cybersecurity requirements into this management plane. So Cybellum has this cyber digital twin platform and concept, which we'll talk about moving forward here. So specifically, what is a cyber digital twin? Similar to other digital twins, whether it's in manufacturing, like I said, or safety, crash, we create a digital representation of the physical product. Now, what we do is we take the binary file, the release file, so we don't need a source code or any of the IP that's included in your supply chain, but we create an exact replica of the firmware of the device. So that replica is going to include your hardware BOM, your software BOM, interfaces being used like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, USB. It's going to document the control flow between the different components, the firmware, the API, encryption methods. It's a very data-rich, contextualized replica of the physical hardware and software that's going on the device itself. So now we've got this identical replica, and that is the entire basis of how we analyze the twin moving forward. So this replica is used as the basis for compliance and security analysis, and is continuously monitored throughout the digital thread in PLM. So it's important to note here too that this solution that we have is completely offboard and agentless. So we're not installing anything on the device itself. We know that introduces a whole level of complexity. So we're actually an offboard solution that's part of the PLM platform and the thread. So the value of the digital replicas enables device manufacturers and suppliers to perform the security and compliance analysis without any effect on the product itself, both in development stage as well as post-startup production. So now that we kind of understand what product cybersecurity is in this concept of a cyber digital twin and what Cybellum really brings from a product cybersecurity standpoint. How does this fit into the bigger picture, and what would a workflow look like with product cybersecurity integrated into a higher level PLM thread? So I'm going to hand back to Marcus to talk a little bit about what that would look like from a higher level in PLM. So Marcus?
Yep, still here. So what is the idea? So I talked before about any type of requirements and mentioned there could be and will be a safety requirement, security requirements, any type of requirement. There could be hazard analysis, risk analysis related information. So all linked together, which are necessary finally to understand what the system should do, the component should do, and what kind of quality levels needs to be reached. So this is all in Windchill RVNS, linked and traced together. And what John mentioned before, there could be the situation, one of the scenarios that a supplier will hand over the binary to the OEM. And assuming we are now here, the OEM, we will take this, this binary, which was handed over to us, store it version safe into Windchill RVNS, link it to the related project, link it to all the necessary information, and start planning the security scan. This can be a pre-configured security scan. It means there are specific parameters to take, maybe depending on the hardware platform, the CPU, which is on ASICs or anything else. And finally, if the scan is set up on Cybellum, on the Cybellum platform, we can start out of Windchill RVNS the test who will be executed. So this can take some time depending on the complexity, can be quick, can be fast. But basically what will be then in the next step when we have conducted the scan, moving to step number 5, there will be a report created on Cybellum side, a detailed report. And what we take from this report is just meta information, which we bring back into Windchill RVNS for completeness. But the detailed report will be stored, or will stay at the Cybellum platform. And one important element is the security score. So John will explain us in a second in the next slide what the security score is. But what we see if we take a look, or the assessor will take a look into Windchill RVNS, is a summary and an indicator. And depending on the need, he can drill down and figure out what are the details to that. So when this is all published, we may have different scenarios. There could be minor findings. There could be a very severe findings. That means at the end, actions needs to be started or triggered. So if we are in an engineering cycle, it's maybe not as critical as compared if a device is already in use in thousands of hospitals. That means if there's really a vulnerable found, which is very critical, because of the ongoing scans, like John described, we may need action more or less in real time. So that means product owner, responsible persons need to be informed, maybe not just per email, maybe as well via text message or any kind of information feed you can think of. So that means depending on the result, then we can push out a notification that the team can take action on it and mitigate the identified problem. Handing back to you, John.
Thanks, Marcus. So we've gone through that workflow, and thank you for going through that from a high level. You'll see that there's a lot going on from a product development standpoint. And by integrating the product security into that flow, we can now create that thread. One of the things that comes out that Marcus alluded to was the security score. So if we're scanning early and we take a look at this whole idea of shift left, if I've looked at my software, ran an analysis with Cybellum, I'm going to get this security score. Now, you're looking at a very high level report. There's a lot of data that's driven below this that's available to the users, a very rich set of data. But from a high level, you're going to see here your level of compliance to any regulations or standards that you're measuring against. And then more importantly, the remediation path on how to correct any issues. So in the case of what we're showing here, we're looking at vulnerabilities, open vulnerability report. So you'll see there's a score of 6.86 here, which, it's a 0 to 10 score. The lower you are, the better. But this is a calculated score that we can configure the calculation based on your policies, but this is based on some industry standard policies. And this measures your risk of exposures on the open vulnerabilities, both on what's open and their severity, and it's also how relevant they are to your particular context of product. So you're going to get both the score, and then more importantly, part of the system, we present data back to the users, and we're going to offer remediation. So how do I improve my security score? You're going to get a list of triage actions a user can take to say, if you patch this system software, or if you patch these component updates, you're going to improve your security posture by, X percentage. So we give you a very clear data-driven glide path for your users to say, how do I actually improve my security score? How do I get better? How do I focus the time and resource that I have within the organization to make these improvements? So again, if we're doing this early and we're doing this on an often basis, you can continuously refresh the urgent items for your team to work on, and then feed that back in for the next development cycle that you have. So in this case, we're looking at this, we're recommending make these patches, make these component upgrades, and we're going to push that back into the PLM workflow, because typically your product security team is going to be different than your product development team. The people going to patch the software and make these updates are in a different work stream. So the product security team can make their recommendations, they can point in the right directions, and push that back into the workflows of PLM so they can go be implemented in the next product release. So with that, I'm going to pass this back to Marcus to see what it looks like moving back into that workflow.
Thanks, John. So we have seen a bad score, and of course, something needs to happen now. That means reaching out to the supplier. He will take action on whatever is needed. And then there's the moment where we will receive the fixed binary. So we are on the right side at step 9. That means we have the whole project set up. There are still the requirements. Maybe there are some changes to the tests, whatever is needed to be more precise. And the binary will be put as a new version save into the system and linked here as well. And then we start the same procedure, and that can go incremental. So depending maybe on the complexity, the criticality of a component or a product, of course, this can run in loops, automated or manual process. So in this case, after receiving the binary, doing some adjustments, the scan will be started again. We see another test session. That means it's uniquely stored in the system. That we see how often test run, what are the results, and basically what kind of actions been taken. We then, of course, get another report of this test session or validation step, and another security score. This will be reported back. And in this case, in number 8, we just maybe receive an email which says, oh, everything is done. Security scan went well. So, and John, went well?
It did go well, Marcus. And Marcus actually hit on a couple of very important points there. So now we've got this digital twin, the cyber digital twin. It's a versioned item that's moving through the life cycle. So we can see what actions have been taken to it, what has been fixed, what's been mitigated. So part of a lot of the regulations and policies are saying, I need an audit trail of this. It's not just a report. We have a living digital twin that's within this PLM process. So now, as Marcus said, we come back, we finish these things. The score here says 0. If you get to 0, congratulations. Usually you're still going to have some flaws or some vulnerabilities that are left. Your score may not be 0, but you're making progress to it. Now, what's important to note here too, that we didn't mention earlier, is Cybellum helps triage vulnerabilities through advanced context-based filtering. So the filtering, what this means is, if I've got known vulnerabilities against my product, against let's say some of them open source software that I have in there, but it only affects the Bluetooth port, and I'm not using a Bluetooth port in my product configuration, Cybellum's going to help filter out all those vulnerabilities that don't affect your particular product context. So we're helping reduce that and get your security score down automatically by triaging some of these things through the different analysis that we do. And then we're freeing up the time for your people so they don't have to go look at those things. They can look at the more relevant and high impact items. So we may not get to zero, which means you have zero risk found, but we can continuously improve our security posture by providing users the right data and the right context to make the biggest impact on improving our security posture. So in the short time we've had together today, we've tried to introduce some very high level concepts and framework around how PLM, the bigger picture, fits, and how Cybellum and a specific product cybersecurity thread would fit within that PLM framework. So we built our platform and our integrations in a way for customers can start with some early simple product cybersecurity management and then work towards more advanced integrations with PLM workflows in the organizations as they mature in this space. So it's a great integrated solution with PTC. It shows how we fit into the PLM process in the organization. So a few more things that we wanted to talk about is just some of the key benefits that we hope are highlighted today. And there's quite a few, but we'll focus on a few. So from a risk point of view, having the ability to identify vulnerabilities and even policy compliance early in the product development lifecycle reduces your risk for costly revisions later in the development cycle. It also helps to reduce your risk of exploits post-production launch. So we're doing this shift left to identify early and make the changes early. And you see by being part of the PLM process, we can actually push that left. Now, from a time to market point of view, time spent sifting through insequential vulnerabilities is eliminated. The ability to identify early in the development process the compliance issues and vulnerabilities and remediate them prior to developments, mitigation in the next stage shortens the time to market of the product. So we're compressing the time to market by identifying the stuff early and upfront. From a compliance perspective, we talked a lot about that in how we mitigate the risks in compliance. And we've also talked about automating and eliminating many of the manual labor intensive tasks. Now, this does not mean that we're proposing an easy button and eliminating the need for human oversight. The automation that we're talking about is taking away many of the manual and labor intensive tasks out of the equation. And more importantly, presenting the data to the user, which helps them focus their time on areas which have the highest impact on improving the product cybersecurity position. Now, most companies we speak to have a hard time analyzing just 50% of their product portfolio. And think about that, by the staff that we have and all the products we have going into production, we can only look at half of the products from a specific scanning and vulnerability management standpoint based on resource and based by workload. The automation that we're talking about and the efficiency tools that we've developed help customers approach that 100% portfolio coverage. So you can honestly say that we've looked across all the products going into production, and they have been scanned, they've been triaged, we know what the vulnerabilities are, we know what our risks are. So the final comment around this is around traceability. And traceability, you've seen this digital twin footprint that we introduced. We can track where a product has been, what's been addressed throughout the life cycle through the version histories and the history that we track. And most importantly, how new threats affect the products already under management. So as new threats come in, we can quickly look at how does this threat affect my portfolio and all the products under management? So I can quickly react to new threats and also mitigate those risks and find a path to remediate them. So the final thing I want to step back is in the beginning, we didn't talk about ourselves and who we are for a reason. We wanted to introduce the concepts and the solutions that we provide, but who are we? We're a cybersecurity technology company based out of Tel Aviv. We've got global offices in the US, based in Detroit specifically is where I am. We've got Germany, Japan, Korea. The most important thing here too that I want to point out too is our go-to-market strategy is very specific. We've got automotive, we've got medical, and we've got industrial IoT. Those are the specific things that we take to market, and we do that for a reason, because we align ourselves with the standards and alliance activities that are going on in those specific industries, so that we're well prepared to help you navigate those specifics. We're not just a general product cybersecurity across every industry, they're specific. When we go to market with automotive, we partner with those alliances. With medical, we partner with those standards and alliance activities, and with industrial IoT. So it's been very much part of our growth strategy and our success in these three specific industries by taking that prescriptive approach. So with that, that wraps up the sections that we're going to talk about here. And I think we would like to thank the audience. And there's some contact information for myself and Marcus as follow-up. But I think we're going to open it up to questions that may have come in during the session that we've had today. An idea, have we had any questions come in?
So we have a few, but for anyone who still wants to add his question, please feel free to do so by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So let's start with the ones that have been submitted. The first one, you have described many processes here. Do I need to implement them all at once? Where do I start? Marcus, I guess this question is for you.
I will take that one, yeah. No, so the idea is to be flexible, and every company has own needs, has maybe own pain points from their business point of view, from their daily business point of view. So what we need to do is jointly with Cybellum to figure out where to start. It could be maybe that requirement management on some level is most important, jointly with the Cybellum platform. It could be that maybe the test management is an important element. So from a PDC point of view, there's flexibility, and as well, of course, from a Cybellum point of view. And yeah, if you have questions to that, reach out to us. We can take a look. We need to understand a bit your use cases and pain points. And then I think our technical team and architects can come up with a solution which will fit to your needs.
Okay.
Hope that answers the question.
I'll add a little bit of commentary on that too, because even around the product cybersecurity thread, there's a number of different ways that the companies have traditionally acted and where they're trying to go. A lot of this space has been around kind of static or dynamic reports that are done point in time, say later in the development cycle. And companies are used to really just a scanning process and tool and report. They need to mature into looking at product cybersecurity as a PLM thread and really the full breadth of what we offer. Even from a Cybellum standpoint, we can start with kind of that scanning point in time event and help you guys mature to how would that process look through my organization, what changes would be necessary, and then work with PTC and how to integrate those threads together. So there's multiple ways to look at that. And the idea of PLM around product security is somewhat new to a lot of companies. And so there is a maturity process that we'll walk through with that as well.
A good addition. Thanks, John.
Next question that we have here, how is cyber digital twins different from the digital twin that we have today? John, would you take that?
Yeah, it's funny. So I spent a lot of years in the whole PLM space and selling digital twins for 20 years now. A digital twin is really just a digital representation of the behavior that you want to see in the field physically. So you'll see a CAE digital twin for like crash tests in automotive. There's ergonomic digital twins for factory workers. So in the case of cyber digital twin, what we're trying to do is just create that, again, the exact replica in digital form of how that system is going to behave in production. So when we extract from that release binary, that final version of software going on to the hardware, we can tell you what is going into the field. So what the hardware looks like, the software, the interaction. So again, it's a contextualized view in digital form that we can continuously monitor and analyze throughout the development lifecycle.
Yeah, and this time I want to add something, John.
Sure.
So I like the question. So, and if you look at the PDC logo, it's a P and a D. That means the physical and digital world. So what we try to do at PDC is to have a digital representation as well, and it fit perfectly to the Cybellum platform, because each of the companies, each of the products have their own responsibility and enrich the digital twin. So if we take the system of records, also the requirements are part of the digital twin. The tests, of course, the part structure and things like that. So an additive to what Cybellum is offer, I think we come very close to a full digital twin here.
Thanks, Marcus.
We have one last question, unless more are coming. If I'm a device manufacturer, what are the best practices to work with my supplier in this context?
Oh, I can take this one. There are possibilities in terms of information exchange, maybe during the engineering process. That means the OEM has requirements he want to hand over to the supplier. The supplier will import them to their system and hand back maybe the response. Later on, we see maybe change requests and test results. So there are possibilities. There are known requirement exchange formats, which also can be used in medical. So the requirement interchange format between different vendors, for example. And that's one possibility. There are also standards for change exchange scenarios. So we need to take a look here as well, what kind of data, the frequency, the amount of data, and then we can choose the possibility how to exchange information in which phase of the engineering cycle is necessary.
Thanks,
okay.
Marcus.
And that was our last question. So I think that with this, we are wrapping this webinar. Again, you are most welcome to send your additional questions if you have any to John and Marcus directly, or to myself. You have my email confirming this with your registration. We will share the recording of this webinar shortly, and we hope to see you again. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having us. Thanks
Thanks,
watching.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.